Here's where we are in the governance series. Phase 1, seeing the system, letters 1 to 12, complete. We are currently in Phase 2, designing the system, letters 13 to 30. We completed Stage 1, entering design, letters 13A and 13B. Stage 2, stabilizing the core, is letters 14 to 17. And we just completed letter 17B, seeing through a new lens. Stage 2 is now complete. We are now beginning Stage 3, seeing clearly, letters 18 to 20. We are in letter 18A, when the system cannot see what it holds. Stage 2 built the structure. Designated decision owners are named. The clear authority mandates are confirmed. The mandates are defended. The sustaining designs are in place. Something real was built. And now a very important question in Stage 3 arrives. How do you know it is working? Not on the day it was built, not in the week after it was communicated, across time, under pressure, when the conditions change and the design is tested against a reality it was not originally designed for. A governance structure cannot sustain what it cannot see. Stage 3 is about designing the visibility that makes sustaining possible. Letters 18A and 18B are closely related in this series. They address two conditions that live in the same territory and are frequently mistaken for one another and require different design responses. Reading both and developing the ability to distinguish between them in your own organization is itself a governance capability. That capability is what Stage 3 is designed to produce. 18A addresses what happens when the reporting system was never designed to show what is actually happening. 18B addresses what happens when the reporting system is showing accurate numbers and the picture is still incomplete. The conditions look similar from the outside. The design responses are different, and the cost of applying one design response to the other condition is a governance system that treats the symptom without reaching the gap. The condition rarely announces itself as a reporting gap. It arrives as something else entirely. A story makes the distinction concrete. The door I walked through was a training request, agent and supervisor training on a contact center application. The customer was experiencing negative feedback and high attrition among both agents and supervisors. That is what was on the work order, routine training. That is how governance conditions announce themselves. Not as reporting gaps, not as design conditions, as training requests, as customer feedback conditions, as attrition numbers that have been climbing long enough that leadership has begun to accept them as normal. The presenting symptom almost never the root design gap. The root design gap is what the organization has not yet been designed to see. What I found inside was not a training condition. Agents were graded on number of calls, not quality, not resolution, not customer outcome, the number of calls. When a measurement system is built around one parameter, it does not create insight. It creates optimization pressure around that parameter. People respond to what is measured. When the only thing that determines compensation and job security is call volume, the rational response is to maximize call volume, not to maximize customer outcomes. Agents learned how long to stay on a call to trigger the count. Then they transferred or disconnected. The supervisors received reports. The reports showed call volume. The numbers looked acceptable. Nothing in the reporting showed what was happening inside each call because the reporting system was never designed to show it. Leadership saw acceptable numbers. The customer experienced something different. The agents experienced something different. The supervisors experienced something different. And none of that experience was visible in the report. This is the visibility gap. The organization cannot see what is actually happening because the reporting system was never designed to show it. The information does not exist in the reports. In the contact center, no one could see call transfer rates, call duration before transfer, or customer experience outcomes because those parameters were never configured. The data was happening. It was not being captured. The visibility gap is not the same as inaccurate data. The data that existed was accurate. The design gap was that the data that mattered most had never been defined as something the system needed to capture. The gap was not in the numbers. It was in the decision about which numbers to collect. This distinction matters because it determines the design response. If the data is missing, if what leadership needs to see is not in the reports because the system was never designed to capture it, the design response is signal integrity design. You're not correcting data. You are building what the system captures. Installation is not implementation. This distinction is the structural part of this letter, and it applies to every governance system, every AI monitoring platform, every reporting structure that was purchased, configured by a vendor, and handed to an organization that was told the implementation was complete. Installation puts a system in place. The technology functions, the reports are being generated. From the outside, the system is operating. Implementation aligns the system to what the organization is actually trying to achieve. It asks first, what does this organization need to know? What information, if visible, would allow the people who lead this system to lead it more effectively? What does success actually look like? Not on the vendor's template, but in this specific organization with these specific outcomes. The standard vendor model is to present features and capabilities, not to ask about the business, not to ask what the organization is trying to accomplish. The default template gets configured and the engagement closes. The contact center had been installed. It had not been implemented. When I began working with the supervisors, I asked them one question. What information would you like to see? No one had ever asked them that question. What followed was not a technical conversation. It was a governance design conversation, one the organization had been unable to have. Not because the people were unwilling, but because no one had framed the reporting system as a design choice. The supervisors assumed the reports were what was possible. They had been living inside a system whose limits they had inherited rather than chosen. I showed them the parameters available in the system documentation. What do you want to know about your customers? What do you want to know about your agents? What information, if you had it, would change how you lead this team? They began selecting. I began configuring. I built the entire new configuration in a test environment first and showed them exactly what they would be seeing before the production launch. That is when the energy in the room changed. Not because the technology had changed, because for the first time they could see what they were going to be able to see. What happened when the new system launched? The new contact center went live. The reports came alive. I want to be precise about what I can and cannot claim about the outcome. I cannot show you a before and after comparison. When the reporting parameters change, the historical data and the new data are measuring different things. 6 months of data captured under the original parameters cannot be meaningfully compared to 6 months of data captured under the new parameters, because the parameters define what is being measured, and what is being measured changed. Claiming improvement by comparing those two data sets would be claiming something the data cannot actually demonstrate. What I can show you is what became possible. Customer feedback improved because we added menu selections that gave customers information without requiring them to wait for an agent. Supervisor attrition began to stabilize because there were fewer conditions to manage when the reporting accurately reflected what was happening. Agent attrition began to stabilize because there were now multiple parameters on which performance could be recognized and compensated. And something that cannot be captured in a report, the energy in the room changed. People can feel the difference when the system they work inside begins to serve them rather than constrain them. When the tools they use every day reflect what they actually do, and what they do actually matters to what the organization can see. That is real. The improvement was not the numbers. The improvement was the beginning of a tracking system designed for what the organization actually needed to know. The design response, signal integrity design. The visibility gap is not a technology condition. It is a governance design gap. The absence of a deliberate decision about what the organization needs to see in order to know whether what it built is doing what it was designed to do. Signal integrity design is that deliberate decision. 4 questions define it. What are we measuring? Not what the system measures by default. What the organization has deliberately chosen to measure because it reflects the outcomes governance is designed to produce. In AI governance, are the model monitoring parameters capturing the signals that would indicate model drift, boundary violations, or accountability gaps, or are they capturing the signals that were easiest to configure at launch? The same 4 questions apply directly to every AI monitoring platform currently running in your organization. Who defined the measurement? The person who configured the system is not always the person who understands what the organization needs to know. A vendor who installs a platform configures it to function. A governance designer configures it to serve the organization's specific accountability needs. In AI governance, were the performance parameters defined by the engineers who built the model or by the governance owners who need to know whether the model is performing as intended in production? What would we need to see to know the governance is holding? This is the question most organizations have never asked. Not what does the dashboard show? What would we need to see specifically in this organization to know that the designated decision owners named in stage 2 are making decisions within their confirmed mandates? That the authority thresholds are being honored? That the governance designed is the governance being practiced? Who maintains the integrity of the measurement system over time? This is the version control question. And it is among the harder designs to maintain. Not because the concept is complex, but because the capacity to sustain it is rarely built in at the start. If the parameters of the reporting system change, for any reason, including improvement, the historical data becomes incomparable. The 6 months before the change and the 6 months after are measuring different things. An organization that compares them as if they are the same report is not seeing clearly. It is comparing 2 different definitions of reality and calling it a trend. Someone must own this. Someone must have the authority to change what is being measured and must exercise that authority with full awareness of what the change means for the organization's ability to read its own history. Most organizations discover this requirement only after a consequence has already arrived. Not because the people were inattentive, but because no one was given explicit ownership of the measurement system itself. Version control of reporting parameters is not a technical detail. It is a governance design requirement. Organizations that build signal integrity design into their governance structure do not wait for the consequence to reveal the gap. They see the gap in the design before it produces an outcome no one can trace back to the decision that caused it. The connection to letter 11. In letter 11, one device appeared as 5 different representations across 5 different dashboards. The data was defined inconsistently across teams, and the organization believed it had more conditions to address than it actually did. In the contact center, the data was defined incompletely, and the organization believed it had a training condition when it actually had a governance design gap. Both stories carry the same insight. Data does not only report reality, it defines it. What you choose to measure is not neutral. It shapes what you see, what you respond to, and what you never discover. The visibility gap lives at the boundary of what the organization has chosen to measure in the space between what is actually happening and what the reporting system was designed to show. Closing that gap does not require new technology. It requires a governance decision. What does this organization need to see? And then the discipline to design the system that shows it consistently, accurately, and with the version control that ensures what you are seeing this quarter is generally comparable to what you were seeing last quarter. There's a second condition of seeing clearly that 18A has not yet addressed. It lives in the same territory, close enough that the two are frequently mistaken for one another in the boardroom, in the audit, and in the governance review. The contact center story resolved when the reporting was redesigned. The right parameters were configured. The supervisors could see what they had never been able to see. But consider a different version of that story. The reports are configured precisely, the parameters are deliberate, the data is being captured, leadership receives the numbers, and the numbers are accurate, and the picture is still incomplete. That is not a visibility gap. The system can see. The condition is different, and it requires a different design response. Letter 18B asks, what happens when the numbers are accurate and the picture is still incomplete? Patterns addressed in this letter: visibility gaps, which resolves to signal integrity design. The next letter is 18B, when the numbers are accurate and the picture is still incomplete. We will talk about metric distortion, which resolves to governing signal definition. Thank you.